Hey, what's up, guys? I'm doing a bit of a sleep schedule reset here, because man, mine's been messed up with this cold and everything like that, so I'm a little bit tired, but we'll go with it anyway here. Keith, to kind of address what you were saying directly, like, I wasn't so much saying I want out or anything like that. It's just, like, for me, like, this isn't my passion, and that's, I think, like, a big thing that comes from this is, like, you know, I like I would like it's just like it's a social thing like where some people want to have a dozen friends. I'm happy with three or four. When it comes to like real world and real world stories, like I'm happy putting in time and effort to tell a story for my friends. It's something I hope they enjoy. I don't fancy myself the best or anything like that, but it's like I do it to try to provide entertainment like for a friend. It's like I kind of liken it back to that fishing story where I used to tie flies and everything like that. Like I used to do it because I liked the creative outlet, outlet of it. Like back when I was, a good bit younger and liked to fish and everything. I'd never want to teach a class like of 15, 20 people to do it, and I'd never want to sell my services to like be an instructor or to tie flies for people. Like it was a hobby. It was something I did. I don't want to say to unwind so much, but it was like a creative outlet for me that was me and mine, kind of thing. Like I had a friend, or actually it was an older guy named Charlie Danaway. It's like we used to talk about, we share fishing stories and like, oh, what fly worked for this day and what hatch was on, and oh, how'd you like, did you use muskrat fur for this or that? Like it's some real heck level shit. but yeah, like I said, like I think that's a big thing that kind of I don't want to say separates me from this project because like I still want to help out and everything like that. I'm not saying tap me out or anything like I don't have an interest in it. It's just I don't think I have the same passion for it that you guys do because you guys, like I said, I was gonna ask something along the lines of like, what are your motivations for this? Like, is it fame? Is it notoriety? Is it potential wealth? Is it just wanting to tell a story? Like I don't mean, like I said, I don't know anything about authors or writing or anything like that. It's like I imagine on some level it's because you have a story you want to tell. It's not about bringing real world to the masses so much, but it's giving them a glimpse into what real world could potentially be because you're so passionate about the stories that happen there. And if it's one of those ones where like I would say going into it, ask yourself, are you happy if 15 people read it or 150,000 or 1.5 million? Like if you're happy with all three of those things, I would say absolutely go forward with it because like if you're bringing in new people to it, like a new audience and like you're passionate about telling the story, it's like it's great however many people, but like if you're just looking to say I want to bring real world to Netflix or something like that, like I feel like aspirations are getting far ahead of where things are. It's like, and like I said, I'm not going to try to shoot down anything or anything like that. I just, a certain realistic side to things. Um, but yeah, like I said, I do want to be clear. Like, I don't want to like completely tap out of the project or anything like that. It's just like for me, like I'd like to help out where I can. Like if you ask for some contributions, I'll certainly give some contributions. But like I said, I don't fancy myself a writer. I'm more of a shoot from the hip storyteller with a lot of things. Like with your sessions, I'll speak sort of on the behalf of the DM. Like this, it's like I go in with a rough idea of things, like a rough idea of a story, but then try to adapt around it. It's like I don't have every like when you go into that village and everything like that. There's not an NPC sheet for every character that's out there. Like not even all the shopkeepers. Like Malik had a name, and that was the only thing I had prepared that you might meet him. So it's like, yeah, like I don't fancy myself like the author to the level of things that I've read that I've enjoyed, or things that I've watched that have been books that I've enjoyed, where they talk about world building and stuff like that. Like that flourish that exists uh, with creating a atmosphere, a character, an emotional connection to it, like stuff like that. Like I strive for it based on what I see in other media. Like I think like my description of void space is like it's like that's me trying to like mimic what I've seen others do. Like I don't consider that to be my like a strong suit or anything like that. Like it's something that I've tried to adapt based on what I've done. So it's like in that regard, and like I said, it could be self-deprecating or whatever. But it's like, yeah, like I fancy real world to be a hobby I'm passionate about, but like a hobby that I could care less if is shared. Or like, and like I said, like with the, I know you said about the monetization thing. Like my theory with monetization was, listen, I pay subscriptions for Hulu, for Netflix, for Amazon Prime. I have like some stuff. I'll like put some money into some games I really enjoy in a monthly fee. I'll dish out a couple bucks if I can get some DM sessions in there. You got a $15 a month plan to get me, guaranteed 4, 5, 6 sessions. Like you can make some back on the side. That's what I was talking about when it comes to monetizing real world. Like, like obviously, like ideally, if in a perfect world, like you sell the story, everyone can retire, and real world happens more often. That's awesome. But when I was talking about like monetization of real world, it's like there's so many subscription services out there. Like if there's a way to incentivize it, like to get more DM activity, like if there's something like that 2 hour session is keeping away from, it's like a monetary hit to them. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind kicking out dough to help people out and everything like that. Um, but yeah, like I said, I think we kind of had our wires crossed on that one a little bit. I understand what you were saying. I think as far as like monetization, this is the way to do it. But like that, like I had a very a very different approach to it in my mind when we kind of talked about it, like off the cuff there. Um, all that out of the way. I think I might have misunderstood the assignment a little bit. So I didn't come up with a specific starting point. I just had a kind of a guide that I tried to come up with for starting points, at least things to think about. So I wrote this up, and I'm gonna read it and I'll probably post it that way in case you can't hear it. You can read it there. So if you're this far in the video, this is the part that actually matters. Um, so I said, so we as a group have a host of worlds, a host of races, and a host of stories at our disposal. What kind of story do I or we want to tell? And like I said, do we want to borrow things? Like there's like, to me, I think I've spoken on it a lot of times before, like the Splinterians are one of my favorite races in real world. But I also love the new Itari. Like I think Sean does an amazing job of setting up races and societies and structures and everything like that. It's like, do you want to dip into one of these races, or do you want to start a new race from scratch? Like there's on the one hand, like it gives an opportunity to use these tools that we already have at our disposal, worlds that are already built and that can be changed slightly if needed. It's like you can keep certain core tenets, but if they clash with something else, it's like, yeah, you can make a little lenient one way or the other. If said DM would want to be lenient with their like intellectual property in a sense. So like, do we want to go with a story of an alien world and an alien race that mirrors our own, and then point out the differences that exist? Like similar to just like sci-fi movies that take place off of Earth, or do you want like a mixed race world like Rebellious or Unleashed, where you look at the world through the guise of a single planet and the aliens that exist? Like, do you want to tell a global type story? You can build a civilization from the ground up and expand on it throughout the story. Kind of like the two examples I thought of was like Harry Potter and the House Elves story. How like Harry Potter's a story, or a story of wizards and like kid wizards in the school and everything like that. But like in the books, like the House Elves play like a really kind of key, I don't want to say side story to Hermione and everything like that. But it's like you kind of learn a lot more about like another race and the problems that they go through. Um, or do you want to do something like even like the Silmarillion? Whatever it is, like the Lord of the Rings, basically lore Bible in a sense, that talks about like, Lord of the Rings tells the story of like Frodo's journey, and then the Silmarillion is kind of like everything expanded upon. Like it's like the greater universe as a whole, like the history that led up to it, like the significant people, like the people whose names you might have heard mentioned in the backstory to them. Or do you want the assumption like that there's a greater universe at play? Like, do you want it to be a galactic scale story? Or you could just be part of a galactic community. Like I don't know if you guys seen like Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Like that was a book that was turned into a movie, and it's like it tells the story of kind of like there is a greater universe, but it's like it's focused on one area, on one planet being a part of that greater universe. What kind of setting do you want to look for? Like, what kind of technology you want? It's always a good starting point, I think. You've got your high fantasy type settings like D&D and Lord of the Rings, like where it's, like Middle Ages type technology, and you can incorporate a magic system if you want. You've got like your Dark Ages, like your grim dark fantasies, like Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf, Mage, that kind of thing, where it's like a little darker and grittier to everything. Not so much like the high fantasy, like with the elves and the lush forest and everything like that. Like there's still forest out there in the Middle Ages, but like you're more focused on like the dirty, dingy towns and like just how bad things were back then. Then you've got like your modern, your futuristic, your blends of magical and science things. Think like Thor, I think, is a good example of that. Where you're blending technology and magic and basically the understanding between those two things. But like on the same token, I think like Thor has shown people have laser blasters and stuff, but most of their powerful warriors tend to wield things like spears and hammers and swords or daggers, in Loki's case. So yeah, like that's another kind of setting. But then, yeah, like even then, like a general theme, like do you want magic? Do you want science fiction? Do you want horror? Do you want dark? Do you want grim? Do you want like reality based? Do you want like any kind of thing? Like real world is told stories, like in all of these different kind of things. And it's like, what kind of story do you want specifically? Like at least starting points for things. Like it's hard for me. Like this is one of those ones where I don't want to say I'm indecisive. But it's just like all of the stories can be appealing, but as a DM, like I don't have a specific passion for telling one kind or another. Like the current storyline Unleashed with like the old gods and the new and everything like that. It's like, yeah, that's kind of a play on Game of Thrones. It's obviously because the old gods and the new kind of thing. But it's like it's vastly different in that regard. But like religion has a play in it. Like it's basically like these beings that are greater than you. Do you want a world with gods or only men? Do you want gods that are silent, or do you want things that walk around and live and breathe? Do you want to stick with humans for the sake of simplicity? But like on the other hand, like real world is this vibrant universe with a lot of crazy races out there that can do pretty cool things. Do you want to branch out and have humans mixed with other races? Do you want to do you want to rewrite modern history with the perspective of these races integrated into them, kind of like the way Bright and Alienation did? I don't know if you guys have seen either of those things, but like that's another, like to me, it's like a fascinating aspect. I think The Watchmen did it too, like with the idea that superheroes took part in the Cold War and Vietnam War. Even maybe back further than that, I forget. But then beyond that, like what kind of overarching story you want to tell? So like, you have your settings, you have your races, you have your scale. Like, do you want to go a community, a country, a continent, a planet, a system, an intergalactic thing? Like, finding a starting point that you want is probably, I don't know, like I said, I'm not a storyteller. I'm not gonna say I'm not a storyteller. I'm not a writer, so I don't know where you start with this kind of thing. But like I said, because this isn't my passion is not to deliver real world to the masses. Like that seems like something Sean and Keith and a couple of you other guys want to, that you want to do, and I want to be there to try to help you guys. If I can guide you in any way, like I said, I'm not experienced with it, but like if I can offer any insight, if I can do some grunt work or anything like that, I'm happy to help out. But like I said, as far as like, oh, what story you want to tell, it's like it's not my story. Like if you guys are passionate about this, like what story, what do you want? All I'm doing here is kind of offering you some ideas based on literature or media that are out there. And like I said, I know you don't want to copy something else, but like there's so much that's done, but you can obviously put your own spin on it. But yeah, like beyond like the setting and the races and stuff. It's like what's your source of conflict? What kind of story do you want to tell? Do you want to tell a hero's journey, a villain's redemption, good versus evil versus moral grays? What source of conflict do you want in the story? Do you want it to be interpersonal? Do you want it to be within a small group or small groups? Do you want to have like factions? I think not a good example of that. It's not a good movie. It was like that. What the heck was it? It was a bad movie with Shailene Woodley. Hold on a second. I'm on the phone. She was in like Dauntless or something stupid like that. It was a bad movie. It was like one of those, it was like Hunger Games almost, but it was like they had factions and everyone split into them. It's one of those really crappily written teenage dramas. But yeah, like the idea of like factions, kind of in opposition or working together, like, or some working against each other. Like, do you want to kill them on that scale, or what about like an all-out war? Like, do you want to have, like war is always a source of conflict, like time of war. You could even have it like, anywhere scale from regional to continental to planetary to intergalactic, like a la Star Wars. Those are just like this. Like those were kind of the points I kind of came up with, and I don't feel like I should be the one to say, "Hey, this sounds fun or this sounds cool." Because like I think all of those things can be. You can tell interesting stories from all of those perspectives. It comes down to the story that you as a group want to tell. Yeah, so this is probably already pretty long. Hopefully that didn't really answer anything, didn't really help, but yeah, at least it's something to think about, where you want as a starting point. I'm gonna leave myself out of that because, like I said, it's I feel like if you want to tell a story, you should have something that you can get behind, something that you personally feel passionate about, that you want to get behind telling. The kind of story, or like the kind of story as a group you can kind of come together and agree on, that would be something that you would all enjoy and be passionate about. Alright, I'll catch you guys later.